The following program has been pre-recorded, so please don't call in at this time. If you wish to participate in the program, tune in at 5 p.m. every Wednesday for A Pause for Thought on Baton Rouge Community Radio. Good evening, fellow humans. This is Wayne Parker with A Pause for Thought here on Baton Rouge Community Radio, 96.9 FM here in Baton Rouge. Good to be here. Good to have you here with us. I'd like to remind you this is a live call-in show. You can call in 343-9927, 343-997 to participate in the discussion. And tonight we have a guest, Mr. Imad Nofal from the Baton Rouge Muslim community. Is it okay to introduce you that way, Imad?
Yeah, Islamic Center of Baton Rouge.
The Islamic Center of Baton Rouge. Okay, yes, I guess, yeah, because the Muslim community is much larger than that too, I guess, right? Yeah. Glad to have you here, Imad, and just for the audience's sake, I want to point out that I wanted initially to discuss the upcoming observance of Ramadan and what it is, and why I can't say you celebrate it, but you observe it. And I found it interesting that when I first asked you about this, you emailed me back and said you believed that it started on May 27th. And my first thought was, well, why don't you know for sure? Can you tell us about that? How does that come about?
Yes. We, the Muslims, or Ramadan, fall as a month in the lunar calendar. The lunar calendar comparing to the Gregorian calendar, what we follow, we have 11 days difference, and that make us base our beginning of the month on the moon phases. And since we are a small community here in Baton Rouge, we have to follow some larger communities, and there is some different interpretation. Do you do it using calculations or using eyesight like before? So for us, we wait until it's declared by bigger communities in the United States and in the world to make sure that we are joined our brothers instead of being with the minority. So that's where Baton Rouge specifically adopted this way, because we didn't have a method or a way to declare it by ourselves. So we follow the larger, like big countries like Saudi Arabia and other countries.
Okay, but largely the Muslim faith and other countries with larger communities and that.
They have their way, yeah, and they have their ways to find.
Sure, of course. Well, actually, I just learned recently in studying or preparing for the show on the Gnostic Gospels that Easter, the Christian observance of Easter, is also chosen by the phases of the moon.
Yeah, the lunar calendar.
The lunar calendar, right.
Yeah.
And Alexandria in Egypt is where I think that comes from.
Yes.
And I found it interesting to learn that about Ramadan, or is it Ramadan? How do you...
Ramadan.
Ramadan's okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so what is Ramadan? What are some of the features? Why is it a special time?
Okay, this is basically our holy month of the year. And this month, we abstain from food and drink. It's called it, like if we're going to explain it, it's a self-restraint. We have, throughout our life, we have things that are forbidden, we have things that are lawful, and we can use it. On this month, we really abstain from things that are lawful and they are allowed for us, the food and the drinking, from dawn to dusk every day for 30 days. And during this time, you are expected, since you are connected, you are every minute you don't eat and drink, it's like you are continuing with a type of connecting to God. So it's supposed to help you feel at least a certain time how it is when you don't find the drink, how it is when you don't find the food. It is also make us more concentrate on worship, on more prayer. It is a holy month in every aspect. People basically use this as the time to get back and fix their relation with God. They come back to mosque, they attend more, they give charity more, they pray more. They work even while they're fasting. They work better and they work harder, despite of their don't eat or drink. So that's mainly it's a way to focus on relation with God and spiritual life.
Yes, this one article I found, it's from Dubai, I guess the Indian Express it was titled, but it says that the fast is intended to bring the faithful closer to God and to remind them of the suffering of those less fortunate. It also says it's seen as a way to physically and spiritually detoxify by kicking the impulses like morning coffee, smoking, midday snacking. And I would suggest, well, really, it's like you mentioned, it's like overcoming or ignoring the bodily urges and the instant gratification of our physical needs. And that doesn't harm anybody, but it enables your mind to focus strictly on the moment and your place in the universe, basically.
That's true, and not only it doesn't harm. Actually, it benefit. There is a health benefits for fasting. Our stomachs are working all year, morning, evening. This way, you get your body time to rest. And apparently, when we are not full, it looks like we focus more, and our heart become lighter, and our thoughts become deeper. And this is really something that has been proven by people who study that. And in my personal life, I'm over 50 now, and I have been fasting since I was probably 6 years old, and I have seen it overseas, and I have seen it here in America. It is indeed a time when, and like here in Baton Rouge, you find people who visit a mosque very much 10 times, 20 times, 30 times of what they do. There are people, it's time for people to give. It's time, everything in relation to God. I feel like Ramadan help people come back and get a better relation, let's say get out of the busy life and do better.
Yes, be more in touch with your humanity, which I guess is also being in touch with God and the rest of creation, really.
That's true.
And, you're not distracted by your conscious mind and your daily habits and inclinations. Indeed. And things like that.
Indeed.
Yes. Also, prayer is emphasized a lot more during that, during Ramadan. I mean, it's I think it's right here where Muslims are encouraged to observe the prayer times more strictly or whatever.
Yeah, obligatory prayers in Islam does not change in Ramadan. They still, we have 5 daily prayers and the same thing. But what happened is voluntary prayers. We have a special prayer at night, like for an hour or so. This is basically, is not a must. If somebody cannot do it, it's not like he's going to go to hell or anything. Right. But people really something drives people. People become easy to come and do the prayers and give charity and care about each other. It is a blessed month. It is a blessed month for us.
Yeah, and it's to me, I got the impression, I've looked at the effects of prayer in Christianity, in meditation with Buddhism, and it's Ramadan struck me that the holiday of Ramadan, or the celebration or observance of it, pardon me, you don't have Santa Claus or anything like that, but anyway, it's like a time of centering, a time of getting back to what's real. And what's real is our connection to each other and the fact that we all come from the same place.
And also I like to also to mention here that the understanding of Ramadan is not only abstain from food and drink. There is also obligatory abstaining. This is a fact. Abstaining from sexual activities during that day, but also there is the person should be a model in his interactions, in his dealings, in his honesty. And so while he is fasting, any actions that are bad contradicts the fasting. So the expectations of the fasting person to be more nice, to be better to his wife, to be better to her husband, to her children, to their neighbors. People feed each other, people visit each other, to go to the sick people. So it's basically a time to come back and remediate and get everything that you missed. Month of accountability. It is a blessing in everything. And one last thing about Ramadan is not, there are some people are exempt. I mean, this is also not, if you're a Muslim, you have to fast. The fasting, if you're an adult, capable, you have to fast. If you are in your place, you have to. But a sick person can skip fasting. A traveler person go from a long distance that is tiring him can do that. A pregnant woman, an elder person, a woman in her period, all these type of people are exempt from. The children who cannot afford, cannot bear that. There is exclusions for them. So it is basically very fair and only obligated on the people who can afford it and will benefit from it.
Yes, and I do agree that people do benefit from refraining and from acknowledging. I guess one thing, by refraining from all of these earthly habits, it makes us more aware of them too. And practicing that type of charitable behavior and modest behavior and spiritual behavior during that time helps us to continue it afterward. So I can appreciate that. This article here on Ramadan, though, mentions the 5 pillars of Islam. Can you speak to any of those?
The 5 pillars of Islam start with the declaration of faith.
Mm-hmm.
Then daily prayers. We have 5 daily prayers. Goes with the phases of the sun. Start from dawn and end up before bed. Men are encouraged to do it in congregation, but if you can't do it in congregation, you do it at home. Then the charity, giving a charity. Charity is 2 times. There is obligatory charity, which is 2.5% of your savings. 2.5% of after all your expenses, everything. If you have $1,000, you give $250 for charity. This is obligation. This is for the money that God has given you to help the poor people. But there is also
Let me catch this call real quick, Imad.
Okay.
Good evening. You're on the air with a pause for thought. May I know who's calling, please?
This is Jim.
Hey, Jim. What's up?
I have a question I'd like to ask.
Okay.
I'd like to know what actually, besides praying, you do during the days of Ramadan. What's your typical day like? That's different from your regular day.
Okay. Do you want to stay on to respond, or you want to just hang up and listen?
I'll listen.
Okay.
I'll hang up.
Okay. Thanks.
Yes, I like to finish. Then we said about the prayer, 5 daily prayers,
Okay.
and we said Ramadan, the fasting Ramadan, and the charity, and the pilgrimage to Mecca. There are 5 pillars. Now back to
the pilgrimage, the Hajj.
the pilgrimage,
Yeah, Hajj.
and the pilgrimage is for the people who can afford it.
Right.
It's one of the 5 pillars. These are the 5 pillars of Islam.
Right.
Now, for the respected caller about what difference in the day of Ramadan, there is no difference. The truth is, the day of Ramadan for a Muslim is the same day, except, like I work, I go to my work, I do what I do every day, and but what happens is I became more alerted. I wake up a little early. I do more prayers in the morning. I make sure that I do my prayers as much as I can, more perfect. I give more money in charity. I check, as I said, I try to be, I feel it is a unique worship where you're connected the whole day. Every other worship, you go to the church, you go to the mosque, you go there for half an hour. When you leave, you go back to your normal. You
Right.
gossip, you talk, you chat, you laugh, you do this. But when that happens, even while I'm on my desk reviewing some plans and like this, I feel like, hey, I'm going to give the work more time and a better job. And because how can I am connected to God and not do so the whole day from dawn to dusk, even at the nights where we eat and drink, you will refrain from doing anything. It is really a complete month of connecting with God and connecting with faith. And really, as a Muslim, I personally, and I see my family, my children, my friends, even my relation with non-Muslims, it becomes better and it becomes good. So if this is answered, no changes on normal basis, but everything you do supposed to be better because you are fasting.
I think your life is richer because you're more focused on the moment and yourself and your connection and everything else.
That's
and
it.
to me, that sounds wonderful.
Yes, sir.
You mentioned something earlier that no one is required to observe Ramadan or any part of it that they can't or don't want to or whatever. That doesn't sound like the perception of many Americans of Islam. I mean, and that brings me to someone who wanted me to ask you about the role of women in Islam. How aren't women considered separate and different and inferior and all that? I mean, that's what we're told, right? That's what that's what I hear all the time.
Yeah. This is unfortunately the issue of women is one of the many issues of Islamic issues that has been mixed with culture. Islam is spread all over the world, covers all the continents, and it's mixed with cultures. African culture, Asian culture, Indonesian culture, Palestinian culture, Egyptian. There are a lot of people who live and do things. Now, people, when they see these things, they get mixed up. Now, let me tell you about what is written and what is prescribed. This is, the Quran came to a community that women were exchanged like merchandise. And Islam came to stop that. Islam came to a community of Arabia that where they considered when one of them get a news that he has a girl, he wouldn't like it and they hate it. And some of them used to kill their little daughters. The Islam came to stop that, and there is a Quran has verses that prohibit that. And the mercy of Islam came to change all of that, starting in Arabia and spread all over the world. Now, this is history. And as a matter of fact, the Quran spells out that there is no difference between men and women. Now, God has created us different. We can't can't deny that.
Right.
Those, so in obligation and in consideration, men and women in the sight of God and in the sight of a Muslim are the same, no difference. Now, in activities, in what they can do, in what God has given them, different bodies, different capabilities, they're different because God has made them different to do different jobs in life, and we respect that in our society.
And the differences between male and female complement each other. They actually form the larger whole.
It is.
You know.
And finally, personal experience. I lived all my life, and I lived with a mother and a father and aunts and grandmothers. I never seen any of disrespect. My mother was respected. My grandmother was respected. When they get married, every issue of theirs has been done by their acceptance, their education. All Muslims, women are allowed to go to education. Even among the scholars of Islam, is the wife of the Prophet, peace be upon him. The motherhood is respected, and actually there is a lot of sayings in Islam to glorify and to respect the mother and her position in the family. Political and social status of the woman is respected in Islam. Financial responsibilities is respected. Like even the man, when he married the woman in marriage, she has to accept the marriage. And when she's married and getting some gifts like this, the husband cannot forcefully take that whatever money she get. If she has inheritance from her family, nobody can take that from her, including her husband. So all this does, in Islam, the woman is respected. The woman is half of the society, and she is equal in everything with the man. Cultural. There might be some things culturally happen in different places of the world. Do not mix it with what Islam calls for.
Right, and I'd suggest that all the religions have variations depending on the culture in which they exist. But how would you respond to somebody that would say, probably angrily, that in Saudi Arabia women aren't allowed to drive? I mean,
again,
I
don't think this is Saudi Arabia is not the only Muslim of the world. There is in Saudi Arabia there are 60 million, and in Indonesia there are Indonesia there are 200 million Muslims. women drive in Saudi Arabia, women in Indonesia, in all the different countries of the world. And as a matter of fact, now there's a debate. There is some issues internally for the country I am not aware of. I have families who live in Saudi Arabia. They wish if they can drive, women want to drive, and maybe one day this will change. But I don't think this is coming straight out of the book. It is interpretation by some scholars and
or politicians,
the governments
or
the politician of Saudi Arabia.
Yes, because it's all about control when you're in politics, and that's part of it. But in fact, in fairness, I know some Christian people here in America. I worked with some years ago, not currently, but and they believe that women should not be in leadership positions because they're different from us, and.
That's not true.
No, I agree. No. I'm talking about that's the way Christians believe about the women in their religion. But you're saying that they're equal, and that they certainly were when Jesus walked the earth. Because we went through that in the Gnostic Gospels last week. Women were some of the more prominent members of his group. They weren't talked about too much in modern times, but. Well, we're really zipping through here. You're listening to Wayne Parker on A Pause for Thought. We have Imad Nofal talking about Ramadan and other aspects of Islam. You can call in if you'd like, 343-9927, 343-9927. Can I take a moment here to share something with the listeners regarding the dress of some women in Islam? I found three things that we often hear of: the hijab and the burqa a lot. And I got to wondering, getting ready for the show, what exactly each is. And according to what I was able to find, you correct me if I'm inaccurate, the hijab is a head covering worn in public by some Muslim women. It's just a head covering, which would be the scarf, I guess, right? And then I heard of a niqab, which covers the head as well as the face except for the eyes. Is that true?
Again, just for your information,
Sure.
There are non-Muslims in certain parts of the world who wear this kind of tradition.
Let me get to that.
This is hijab and niqab and burqa. Islam and the Quran calls for women to cover their bodies in a nice, modest clothing, covering everything, including their hair.
And from
now, the women can choose to do whatever they do. And this understanding is flexible. You will find women in Egypt were different, women in Saudi Arabia were different, even among the locality here. As long as the woman cover her body and wear modesty and cover her hair, that's exactly what is Islam called for. Now, some just from the Islam, the burqa, I never, this is something
who knows?
I don't know. But let's call about the niqab. The niqab, there is a more kind of more conservative interpretation. Some Muslims wear it, but again, the majority of Muslims, I would say 80% or 90% of them, what it is from the book is modesty and covering.
Well, then what do men have to adhere to any kind
including
of
men. Men also have a dress code. Men cannot go wearing a very short shorts. They have to cover up to their knees, and they have to cover up to their waist. So between the waist and the knees,
right,
all this part should be covered all the time.
Yes, that's what I found in looking this up, was that it's all about modesty,
yes,
and not showing off your body so as to entice the opposite sex.
Yes,
it's just because that's another earthly distraction, really.
Yes.
And I was just speaking with a couple of volunteers with the station here, and one of the women was saying that she heard a story or read one about a young girl who wore the hijab in high school, and one of her friends told her that if you took that off, your father would kill you. And she got to think about it. She said, well, no, he wouldn't. But she texted him just to see. She texted her father and said, Father, I want to stop wearing my hijab. And he texted her back, according to this story, and said, I can't tell you what to do. I can't stop you. You can make your choice, and I'm proud of you for standing on your own and making your decision. And she didn't want to stop wearing it, but she just wanted to see how he'd react.
The truth, Wayne, I made last Friday, I made the little sermon there about after you're becoming an adult, your parents, whatever the kids of the Muslims do, Your parents are not obligated to carry that burden. So if they choose something, this is on them as an adult, as a full, whether they are men or women, whatever they do is on them.
They don't shut them out of the family or throw them away?
Actually, this is what my call is, basically give more understanding and listen to your children and make sure that to work with them, whether they pray or not pray, whether they wear hijab or not wear hijab. Give them time, because you can't convince them with what you believe if they don't like you, if they don't love you.
You can't believe something you don't believe, right?
Yes, sir.
And boy, that brings me to so many different things. And the thought that I just had is now gone. But usury. I remember reading or hearing on America's media they mentioned that in Islam, usury is not, lending money for interest is not allowed, and they made it sound like that was unique to Islam. But even then, hearing that, I found that was sounded like a good idea. And then I found that that's one of the Christian tenets too. Jesus said you should not lend money for interest.
That's true. Usury is, in Islam, it's called riba. And the meaning of it is basically increasing or adding money to the money without doing anything, just by lending this money. And in the old days, there were no banks and like this, and rich people used to lend all poor people, and it caused a lot of social problems,
Sure.
and people would sell everything. Now, I want to jump because of the time to today. Today also, again, as much as they can, unless if they have, Muslims are discouraged. Now, today, you have to understand, in America, we don't have here a government that tells Islamic people that go chase us. You can do anything you want. You can,
Right.
And a lot of Muslims, they practice, they buy through the bank and things like that. But the Muslim are discouraged as much as he can from borrowing with interest. And he need to try now, is this unique? No, it's not unique. And let me tell you this: I lived all my life, and there are other ways of you can get like some terms with owner. That doesn't mean you don't have to find if you want to buy the houses or like this. There are ways or mechanisms without having to go into usury, into money for money. Like for example, you have a house. I tell you, let me borrow and give you a rent for a certain time, and I buy it one piece at a time.
Rent to own, right?
Yeah. Things like this.
Yes.
So, but the bottom line is, it's a subject that will take time. Interest in every way or shape is discouraged. Now, do Muslims sometimes have to do it? And here, nobody can stop them from doing what. Not even here, even in the Islamic countries.
Even nature has exceptions to its rules. There always there's never any clear line because things don't work that way. Unless there's anything you want to bring up in the last few minutes, I wanted to ask you one other question. And this may be too in-depth to cover well, but the last time you were on the show with Maqsood Hamid, and you and I talked before this show about how rapidly Islam spread across Europe once it caught on in Arabia. And what Houston Smith says in his book is that there are no miracles. The Prophet Muhammad did not do miracles to impress people or anything. And because of that, Islam actually brought the people, where in the places where it thrived, to science a whole lot faster than Christianity did for the members of that religion. And that may be why that the Muslim faith spread so quickly. From what you're saying, Imad, to me, from what I a little bit I know about the different religions, it's a very human, very healthy way of viewing ourselves and people in the world, and that people take to that, and that's why that idea spread so fast. Probably.
Which is the biggest Islamic country in population? It's Indonesia, 200 million population. This country, no sword, no fighting, no war has happened there. Everybody become Muslim through the merchants Muslim that go there, and they start dealing with them and start spreading the Islam. As far as a miracle, the truth is we consider the book, the Quran that we have in our hands, unaltered, unique, is a miracle by itself. It actually, if you go through it and read about it, you will find that every day throughout the 1400 years, there are things that is being discovered that this Quran has talked about it before, in hundreds of years before it happens, a lot of natural and things that happen in the world about the womb and how the creation of the fetus in the womb, a lot of things. So we consider the book, the Quran, is by itself is a miracle. But you're right, by dealing, by showing, by acting in the best manner, that's how the Islam has mainly spread, has the most expansion of Islam came through the actions of the followers of the deen rather than any other movement.
Yes. And, we have a few minutes that our atomic clock on the wall is not quite accurate, but you were mentioned before the show that Muhammad, the religious leaders of his time tried to buy him off to make him go away because he was challenging their power and their scams. I mean, their little money making.
Their way of
and
life.
that was the same thing with Jesus, with the Pharisees and all that. I mean, they're the ones that had him killed because he was ruining their game. He was showing people a better way, and his way was the same as Allah's taught through Muhammad, the Prophet Muhammad, was just love your God, love your neighbor as yourself, and just be a good human being.
That's exactly the same message.
Yes.
No different.
And it's wonderful, and I'm glad that Muhammad survived to his old age anyway, right?
That we thank God
Yes.
for that, yes.
Okay, well, we've got to go. You've been listening to Wayne Parker with a wonderful guest, Imad Nofal from the Islamic Center of Baton Rouge, talking about Islam, Ramadan, and other things regarding this faith. And it's a very fascinating and interesting interview. I sure appreciate it, Imad.
I sure appreciate it too. Thank you.
You have a good night, everyone. We got to go.
Good night.